please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Hey, DFS fans, we haven't forgotten about you. AJ Schultz and I, Paul Bruno, the Statsman, are back with your daily fantasy sports picks with our thoughts ahead of tonight's schedule of hockey games on a Tuesday night. AJ, you handle the DraftKings portion of this part of our show, and I look after the FanDuel portion. What have you got cooking in your DraftKings lineup for tonight's action?
Yeah, so I'm going with two kind of team mini stacks. I'm not able to get the whole first lines in here, but I like the matchups for Boston tonight and for Philadelphia. Obviously, the Flyers are going against Buffalo, so that's a good point. And then I plug in a few other players. Now, full disclosure at the top here, I basically sold out for my forwards and basically just found bodies to plug in on D. I picked some decent opportunities, some guys that maybe could produce, but I definitely sold the farm. So it is a true GPP lineup here because there's not a lot of stability or guarantee that my blue liners here are going to contribute. But I'll start it off with my Boston players that I'm going to utilize, and that's their two, old guard dynamic duo on the top line, Patrice Bergeron at 7,700 and Brad Marchand for 7,600.
You said his name. You said his name. You said his name.
I had to do it. For those from the DFS that only tune in online for the DFS segment, we have banned, or Paul has banned mentioning Brad Marchand for his antics. So
you said it again.
I'm going to use him tonight. That's a lot of money to pay up for those two, but they certainly have found ways to produce. I'm also going to use a pair of Flyers tonight in Sean Couturier at 7,100 and Joel Farabee at 6,100. Again, just trying to fit in either of the other wingers for these guys was a little tricky in terms of the salary route. So the other guys I have here, I have Connor Sherry for Washington at 3,300. Right now we have him in a third line role, but I don't know that we've gotten a real good look at what line combinations are going to be without Tom Wilson. And I think it's possible that Sherry moves into the top six. Even if he doesn't, I like the matchup with New Jersey, so I'm going to keep him in there regardless. But it's definitely something to monitor if you're on the fringes. If he moves into a top six role, I definitely think he's almost a must-have here. My utility spot I fill with my other forward here, and that's Pierre-Luc Dubois, 4,500. Winnipeg is going up against Toronto, who's been playing great hockey of late, so points aren't going to be easy to come by for the Jets. But Dubois currently filling in as the second-line center in between Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers. So if he's not scoring goals himself, he's certainly got two guys on his wings who are capable of doing so. I mentioned I punted on the defense, and that's certainly the case. Phillippe Myers for 2,800. You look at his fantasy points per game on DraftKings, it's just 5.3, but Philadelphia does have a good matchup here. The other guy I use is Adam Pelech, 2,900. Again, right about 6.3 in terms of fantasy points. Tough matchup with Boston, so I get that. But he's a guy that has, a decent floor for his cost, and so maybe if he can steal an assist here or there. In the nets, I'm going to go with James Reimer. Carolina's been really hot lately. I get it's maybe a little bit weird not to use any of their out players and use the goalie. But I like some of the other matchups here. And so Reimer's a bit more of a risk. He actually comes in at the same price tag, 8,000, as Alex Nedeljkovic. So regardless of who gets the start between those two, I'm able to fit them in to my lineup. So that's how I shook things out on DraftKings. Paul, I know for FanDuel tonight, they do have an all-day slate that includes that early Penguin game. We're going to talk about the main slate. But just for our listeners to be aware, Paul's talking main slate FanDuel and not the all day. Although I guess you could just fade that first game and use Paul's lineup in that all day slate.
Exactly. And in terms of the lean that I have, I share your interest in the Philadelphia Flyers over Buffalo. That's a hapless looking team in the Queen City. And I'm all over the Philadelphia side of that equation. Just the same By the same token, I like the Tampa lineup against Detroit. I'm not taking some of the big guns there, but I'm taking in some guys that are good value plays at the lower end of the cost scale, though, to balance out my roster. And it looks like this. At center, I paid up for a couple of strong pivots who are the number one centers on their respective teams. Sean Couturier, back in a good flow of play with 12 starts under his belt, averaging almost 17 fantasy points a game. $7,500 is his price tag, and I'm all over that one against the struggling Sabres. Sebastian Aho has done nothing but contribute steadily all season long, despite the fact that some players have been hurt around him. He's averaging almost 14 points per play in the 24 games that he's suited up in, and we've bashed the Nashville centers all season long. This is a huge advantage for Carolina that I think the exploit with play flowing through Aho, and I think he's all over the scoreboard tonight. Dominic Kubalik has been one of the bright young stars for Chicago, and I think he has a chance to shine this evening against the Dallas team that AJ pointed out very well is struggling in terms of their defensive complement. They just can't be healthy in the back end and in nets, and I think Chicago could exploit that, and Kubalik at $5,000 is a cheap option in that regard. Ditto for Alex Killorn, $5,000 is his price tag. As Tampa goes into Detroit, I think they're going to be all over the Red Wings, and it's the depth guys that have been carrying this team of late, and Killorn could lead that parade tonight. Mikhail Sergachev is playing up in the lineup, more minutes to his playing time, getting a lot of special teams action. I think at $4,400, a good value play there, considering the offensive upside this guy has, as well as his playing opportunity. And I mentioned Keith Yandle in the main part of the show, just passing the 1,000 career games played. He's still a linchpin on the power play for Florida, a team that's been dynamic in that regard all season long against a very struggling Columbus lineup. I think of strong value at $4,300. So while I paid less than $5,000 for both defensemen, I think I got two pretty good ones considering their situations. The remaining two forwards that I have are key offensive leaders of their dynamic offensive teams, and that's Mitch Marner of the Maple Leafs at $7,500. I think that's a little bit lower than his price point in the last little while. It has a lot to do with the opposition from Winnipeg, but I still think the Leafs power play is going to get a workout. A physical Winnipeg team, I think, is going to have trouble keeping up with a speedier Toronto club, and that's going to lead to a parade to the penalty box that should see the Leafs power play lighted up, and I'm counting on that for Mitch Marner's totals this evening. James Van Riemsdyk has been the surprise leader of the Philadelphia offense, and yet he's only priced at $6,300. I think that's one of the better values on the entire board, AJ, when I look at it in FanDuel play. And he's averaged 15.5 points per game, and I get him on the cheap tonight, so I'm all over that. And then I'm probably going to be play the safe route and take a guy who's maybe odds on to be the easiest winner on the night, and that's Carter Hart in the nets for the Flyers against Buffalo at $7,800, not priced among the top goalies on the board either. So some really good value out of a couple of Philadelphia Flyers in that Buffalo matchup. I find that a little bit odd.
Yeah, it's an intriguing night to play. Reminder that that Penguin game is early, so if you want to dive in on that one, we've got both FanDuel and DraftKings have single game or showdown, as they call it on DraftKings, for that Penguin game. So you could play just the single game slate tonight, and then the main slate for the rest of it.
You're going to play that single game slate, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna use all the Penguins, and then hopefully ride it to a big, huge win.
There you are, folks. We wish you good luck with your picks. Keep an eye out for ours. Join us again next Tuesday for the following episode of the podcast with Statsman and AJ. And goalies, please get up, stand up, cover your angles. So long, everybody.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.